Did you know that families most likely to be involved in the child welfare system are the three Bs? Who are the three Bs? Black, brown, and broke folks. I'm Chanel Dupree, and welcome to the Skin Deep podcast. If you work with families, that previous statement should ignite your curiosity. Our purpose is to learn what we don't know, build trust with families, and ignite action on behalf of families. You are a piece of this puzzle and have more influence and power than you know. Let's go deep. Skin Deep, the history of child welfare by race, is a course, a curriculum, a program that I created because of a need that I saw within the system. The need, I'm going to talk about it in two different parts. And the first part is the fact that the whole story is never told. So when we think about the history of child welfare, we really talk about it from the perspective of how white children have interacted with the system. There's nothing wrong with that, but we're leaving out many other communities and cultures here in America and how they have navigated the system. And so when I teach at a law school, and I've taught children in the law. And when I look at the books, and of course, I went through that kind of course of study when I was in law school, it didn't really tell the story of what happened to other families and what happened to other communities who were excluded from the traditional child welfare system as we know it. And so when I started thinking about how to tell the story of families in America, I started looking at it from events and situations that have happened to cultures and communities, and really wanting to outline how that impacted the families that we're serving. And this is the truth. We are in a current day culture where folks don't want to talk about race and don't want to talk about racism, but we are a racialized society that from literally our founding, race has mattered. It has been important, and it has determined in the past your status and how you were able to even move in this country. And so when we look at history and when we look at our literature, what we see is that race and racism has been intertwined and is all throughout legal cases. It's in the sciences. It's in certain religious teachings. It's everywhere. To then say, okay, we're going to intertwine this. We're going to make this so much into who we are as a nation. It's really in the fabric of our country. And then to now say, okay, this is no longer a thing that we're going to talk about. It's not genuine. Communities are resilient. Absolutely. And that's important to highlight and to keep talking about, because I do think that if you only engage with communities who you have something to give, or if that's the only time that you have ever interacted with specific communities, then it can skew your thinking. You can begin to believe that all people from that community or culture or race need your help. And that's just not true. I want to be reflected in what I'm reading. I want to understand what happened to my grandparents, right? Because they couldn't be involved in the traditional child welfare system. And so I started doing a lot of research and talking to a lot of different folks, and ended up doing interviews with people who were from the community and allies from the Black community, Native community, Asian community, Latino community, white community, and started having just genuine conversations on their perspective regarding, let's say, trust, how to establish and build trust within their communities. What are some of the barriers that they've seen? What have been the hard things that they've seen? What have been the good things that they've seen? And ultimately, how do we improve lives and access for families? That's how the course is structured and taught. It's giving 20 different historical events that have happened across the nation that really tell the story of families and tell the story of all families and how they've interacted. And so it is I would say, a masterclass on the impact that families have gone through and what they've experienced. And I talk about this. I talk about the 3Bs, and I got that from my husband, but Black, brown, and broke folks. And those are the people that are in the child welfare system at a disproportionate rate, at a higher rate than they're present in the population. And so the truth is, you're not going to find rich people in the child welfare system. It just doesn't happen. That is concerning on many levels, because then it's also telling me that you have a higher likelihood to be involved in the child welfare system if you're experiencing poverty. And poverty does not make you a bad parent. The second reason is that there really needs to be a roadmap for child welfare administrators, social service administrators, people who work with families, to have a way to navigate having conversations about race, racism, and poverty. And the Skin Deep course and curriculum and workshop, it's that roadmap. And so I wanted to provide that for fellow administrators who perhaps were like me and were trying to have a conversation that felt impossible to have. We don't do a good job with having uncomfortable conversations specifically surrounding race, racism in the child welfare system and with our workforce. I know this because I engaged in this while I was with the agency. I had the pleasure of having the secretary of the agency to be very open to having some of these conversations and discussions. So I jumped on it, and my region began to look for a course, a curriculum, a talk, a speech, or something that could talk to our workforce about bias, implicit bias, barriers, things to look out for in the child welfare system as it related to race. And I couldn't find anything. What I did find was really general presentations surrounding implicit bias, which was great. It was a great starting point, but I really wanted to go deeper. I didn't see it. It wasn't there. So we started gathering data and having conversations with our workforce. And so we're having these conversations. And when I tell you there was radio silence, there was radio silence. And I was so clear that, number one, we need to really be aware of how we're having the conversation with our workforce, because it feels like when we talk about race or racism or bias or implicit bias, that there's this underlying message that people hear that they are biased, they are racist, they are doing something wrong. And that's not what was being said. And so for me, it was, okay, we need to think about how we're presenting this information and how we're talking about it. And we need to keep talking about it. I know the first time was hard, right? I was there. It was me. I was doing it. But what I was telling the folks that I was working with is, yep, but we have to keep going. Like, we have to keep having this conversation because, yeah, it wasn't beautiful the first time, but that doesn't mean you stop. That means that, oh, you need to really dig in and just continue to have this conversation. Because after we got off that call, a couple of workers of color ended up reaching back out and saying, thank you for having the discussion, because my coworkers talk about it all the time. And it shows up in this way and it shows up in that way. And so this is a topic that we need to talk about. And so I knew it was something. I knew it was an issue that we needed to address. And it wasn't going to be comfortable. It wasn't going to be pretty. Didn't really have a roadmap on how to do it, but was just very aware that it needed to be done. It needed to be a topic that was consistently discussed and talked about in the workforce for our helpers who are out there walking with and supporting families. If you are interested in learning more about the family history in America and how the child welfare system was even built, I want to invite you to dive into the online and on-demand Skin Deep, the History of Child Welfare by Race course. Because you're coming from the Skin Deep podcast community, I'll have a special discount code for you in the show notes below. Let's dive deeper on behalf of families.